enterprise, you can't have an arbitrary number of technology stacks. You can't train your staff to write in 10 different languages. It doesn't make sense. And I think, by the way, to stay within the theme of this panel, that's one misunderstanding about Polyglot. Sometimes it's understood as every developer is going to write 10 languages every day, right? And that's just not the case. However, one thing that's different is that now your typical application leverages way more components in the form of REST APIs operated by third parties, in the form of open source software that are standing up left and right. And through that, if you look at the entire ecosystem of the code you're running and you're responsible for in some way, then you have a huge variety in stacks. Because if you're sending text messages with Twilio, or doing voice applications, or you're doing email delivery with a Mailgun, you're doing storage on a big data service, you don't really have necessarily visibility over what their stack is. Yet, all of a sudden, through enhancements that you talked about, these two components are meshed together. Right? You're going to have to deal with latency and how they communicate. You're going to have to deal with compatibility at the data layer. Right? You're going to have to deal with things like what are the events coming out of the service? Are there logs somewhere? Can I trace calls across multiple services? All sorts of new problems, and there's no way, even if you can't make it so that it's all a .NET world, right? It's just not going to. Yeah, I think the forcing function that will really accelerate the growth of that market is the incredible explosion of devices and what they can do. And I mean, UI, computing power, ubiquity, connectivity. We all have a really cool computer in our pocket, and there's a lot of apps that need to be written for those devices that do not exist. So the fact that for every app that exists today, 50 more will be created in the next few years, that is huge. And that means it's a valuable thing to do to focus on what Sinclair is describing, new architectures, new way to build apps, and not just being better at deploying the stuff that already exists. Yeah, I think this speaks to the pressure that a lot of IT leaders are feeling. Ideally, an IT leader is positioned as an enabler, right? You leverage technology to make your organization more competitive. And I think a lot of IT leaders are kind of stuck in between two forces. On the one hand, they're trying to deliver on that, and they have to prioritize and try to build up capacity internally if that's what makes sense. Deliver the right set of development tools to development teams, and at the same time, they've got teams just doing whatever they want. And I think to a certain degree, we're seeing the same thing that happens, with Salesforce. Kind of sneaking up on the IT department. Developers pick their tools, and later IT has to deal with the consequences. And I think there's a lot of unanswered questions there as to how do you manage that situation.